Hello and welcome to the White House 1600 Sessions. I'm Stuart McLaurin, President of the White House Historical Association. Today, we're talking about presidential pets, and we're going to meet some of the most beloved and devoted of presidential companions, and often the more popular inhabitants of the White House. Well, I'm here at the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum in wonderful Boston, Massachusetts, and they put together an incredible exhibit that's meant for the entire family. It features artifacts pulled from their own collection, as well as items from over a dozen other museums and libraries. You know, almost 90 million American households have a pet. That's 66% of our country. So it isn't surprising that many presidents and first families had pets of their own. And as we'll find out, several families had their own menagerie of pets. The Kennedys had dogs, cats, birds, and even a famous pony named Macaroni. There's also a long history of working animals at the White House. Of course, horses were there helping to power equipment during the building of the White House. And President Taft's cow, Pauline Wayne III, was the last cow to live at the White House. She could actually be seen grazing on the White House grounds and the lawn of what is now the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. During World War I, President and Mrs. Wilson had a flock of sheep brought in to graze on the White House lawn that actually saved costs and the manpower required for mowing. And the wool of the sheep was actually sold as a fundraiser for the Red Cross. You can learn more about animals at work in White House history by purchasing a copy of the White House History Quarterly, one of our premier publications. You can find that issue at shop.whitehousehistory.org, or you can subscribe to the quarterly at whitehousehistoryjournal.org. Well, I'm so excited to see this exhibit about presidential pets. So let's go meet Alan Price, the director of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum. Alan, thank you for having us here at the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum in Boston. This exhibit is fantastic, featuring the pets of our presidents. You know, some say that pets are what makes a house a home. And we think of the White House as this sterile building where the government work is taking place. And sometimes we forget that a family lives there as well. And these families have children and pets and grandchildren and all kinds of family activity. And you really see that. It really comes to life here. And I think it was particularly important in the Kennedy family life. Tell us how this exhibit came to be and why you're so proud to share this with the American public.
Stuart, you're so right. And it is a treat to have you here to see all this and share it with others. There's no question that so many people understand history through the lens of presidential history. And then you put it through the lens of the pets that lived in the White House. It becomes so much more accessible. The White House and those presidents become so much more human for people to relate to, connect to, and it's just fun. So when we were thinking about putting this together, as you may know, we tend to alternate our exhibits between more serious topics and more lighthearted topics. And our museum team thought it would be great to see the history of America through the lens of all the pets that have lived in the White House. And we've rolled with it. It's taken a few years to put together with collaborations with so many other institutions. And it's just remarkable.
Well, you know, you mentioned that word collaboration, and we love that we can bring together the presidential sites every 2 years for our site summit. And of the 14 or 15 presidential libraries that are part of the archive system, there are also these birthplaces, childhood homes, other museums that are across the nation. This really wonderful network to share stories like you do so well here at the Kennedy Library and Museum. You know, we have 45 presidents, and they could not be more different, the 45
You're
of them.
So
and
right.
The pets really accentuates that too. And you see that in this gallery.
Yes, we are indebted to the collaborations with everybody from Mount Vernon to the National Park Service to the other presidential libraries and museums. We couldn't have done it without their collaboration. And to my knowledge, it's the first time that this has been gathered together in one for a collection, for an exhibit. And people are responding so well.
Well, I was recording an opening session earlier and I could hear Pauline the cow mooing in the background. And then we pressed the button and you could hear LBJ talking about Yuki and starting to howl. He was howling, Yuki was howling. And it brings out the personality of the president as well, which I think is wonderful. It probably gives them some moments of relaxation to have the pet around, somebody that's not going to talk back or bark back at them necessarily.
Absolutely. So many presidents have commented on it's good to have a friend who's not talking politics so that they can just be with, because the presidency can be a very lonely office.
That's right.
And for the children, for those presidents who have children in the White House, including Kennedy's, the Carters, and so many others, for the children, those pets are such a comfort, such good friends, because it can be a very strange place to grow up.
American families today think of dogs, cats, maybe a fish. White House has not been so simple. There has been, as we'll see, cavalcade of exotic presidential pets. I think that's fun too. I think it's fun to see that we can be very generational in the way that we look at history. We can look at history just for now and what people have now. But you go back to the founding era and our early presidents, and you think, Calvin Coolidge had a pet raccoon? Really? How does that even work? And so it opens the door into understanding our American history through this wonderful prism of the White House and those who lived and worked there. So I'm excited for you to take us through this. You know, I see Fala and macaroni, and it just brings a smile to my face. And
it brings a smile to everybody's face. And
I
to
love
see the progression from work animals to pets to family members, it's really extraordinary.
That's right. I mentioned Pauline the cow. That was actually the milk. And the dairy products for the White House came from this cow on the White House lawn. And that's an amazing thing to think about. Not quite so utilitarian these days, but wonderful collection of animals that have been filtered through our presidential history. This tells the story of them all. And I think it's a wonderful, wonderful display of the American presidency and the American family.
Yes.
And I'm excited to go through it with you.
Well, let's start with FDR's dog, Fala.
Wow.
You know, we have a Scotty, and this is a uniform prepared for his naval voyages if he's on a naval carrier. The public loved Fala. Thousands of fan letters. FDR loved him. Right?
He would probably have his own Facebook page today, I would imagine.
Certainly. Certainly. There's a movie made of him in a way that promotes the American war effort in World War II. And he's used as the face to sell more war bonds and help finance the war. And he's actually used not only as an image, he's actually central in many of the diplomatic meetings of the day.
Wow.
He is there. He humanizes this president in front of other world leaders, and others enjoy engaging with him.
I'm sure it was one of those occasions where a family pet during the Great Depression, the pressures and stresses and strains of a world war, that he was used, as you say, but he probably was very comforting to have for the president and Mrs. Roosevelt as well.
Well, there's certainly a moment where FDR is on a ship with Fala, and the press loves it, and they're filming it from the shore. Now, FDR is whisked away to secret meetings with Churchill, but Fala is left on the deck of the ship so that everybody buys the illusion that FDR is still there.
There you go.
Actually away. So Fala is used as a diplomatic decoy.
Strategic decoy. Way to go, Fala.
And so what we see here is Fala selling the war dog funds.
Oh, yeah. See them
championing the dogs for defense. We have Fala in the picture here with FDR and Churchill and other world leaders, and just a central figure in each of these efforts. He's so popular, the best known dog of the day, perhaps.
Oh, look at this expression on his face there. It's incredible.
Oh, certainly.
Listening to the radio, listening to the fireside chat. That's great.
There's so many recorded interviews where FDR is referring to Fala to the press. They just love it.
So the Johnsons come into the presidency at a sad time for our nation, but Also a different pet time. In the Kennedy presidency, you had Caroline and John, and the pets were sort of for the children. The Johnson children were essentially adults, and so the pets were the president's pets. And I think this is a great story about the personality of LBJ and how you see it in the pet life of the White House.
Oh, Yuki really brings out, Lyndon's personality, no question. Lucy finds Yuki at a Texas gas station.
Oh my
It
goodness.
starts out as Lucy's dog, and Lyndon wants it. He immediately falls in love with it and is famous for teaching the dog to howl along with him.
Come on, sing for me.
And the two of them just do a great
That's
show
great.
together.
And look at little Patrick, the grandson there, just taking
He's
it
just
all in.
startled by it all. And so popular, and commissioned costumes to be made for Yuki. It's just a wonderful contrast. Now, they had many other dogs, most notably beagles. And unfortunately for Lyndon, he's showing off one of the beagles by lifting it by its ears. And America didn't like that.
Yeah, that became a story unto itself.
It did. And there's so many cartoons about other people pulling Lyndon by his ears as a response. But this is true gold to me.
Yeah, I love this. This is really great. Well, let's see what's next.
Sure. Nixon had dogs, and I don't think as many people know about them as other presidents and their pets. But I will say that of Pasha, Vicky, and King Timoho, I think, is one of the most amazing dog names ever to be in the
It
White
is.
House.
I'd love to do a story just on how presidential pets got their names.
How they got their names. It's extraordinary. But so many letters were received, as always. There's always letters to the dogs. But if the White House responds, oftentimes the paw print goes on the
I
letter.
love that. Yeah, I
So
see
that's
that.
a wonderful personal touch. And many people keep those White House letters with paw prints in their collection.
So once again, a presidential pet is brought into messaging, and
Yes.
Nixon does a very famous televised address to the nation
Yes.
where he talks about the dog and
Yes.
Checkers, and it becomes part of his humanizing of himself and of the family.
You know what it was? It was a little Cocker Spaniel dog in a crate that he'd sent all the way from Texas. Black and white, spotted. And our little girl, Tricia, the 6-year-old, named it Checkers.
It's really a presidential pet prop, really, in the
Yes.
Nixon context.
It's true. I can talk about the dog
Yes,
in a way that makes me relatable.
that's exactly right. That's great.
Because presidents are always campaigning.
That's great. Okay, let's see who's next. The Fords. I love Liberty. This, of course, was during the American bicentennial, and we're coming up on
Correct.
America's 250th. And what a great name for a dog of that period.
It's hard to be Liberty. for a
Liberty.
name.
And certainly a beautiful family pet. That was just a great, great pop.
And I think the Fords in their public image are enhanced by Liberty.
Oh, yes. And Golden Retrievers, of course, are one of the most popular dogs in the
Yes.
country, a true family pet across the nation. And, there you go. You've got the White House, the president, the first lady, and the dog right there.
Yes.
Look at him. He's got almost his own pose. Here you see him in the Oval Office. Here you are on the South Lawn, and he's very camera friendly there.
Yes. Well, there's a lovely story about how the dog had an accident on the Oval Office rug. And President Ford would not let the Navy steward clean up the dog's mess. He insisted on taking care of it himself because he said no man should have to clean up after another man's dog.
That's great. So, Alan, this is a little bit different perspective in pets and caring for them beyond in the home, but caring about them as a species.
Absolutely. The rise of the animal welfare movement, it's, I think, most notably in terms of presidents, Millard Fillmore rises to the challenge, and he is the co-founder of the Buffalo, New York chapter of the ASPCA in 1867. And this corner really highlights some of the local efforts and makes it a little bit easier to be more thoughtful about caring for pets. And maybe with some consideration, if people want to consider adopting a pet, we provide some resources for that as well.
Or like Lucy Johnson, pick one up at the gas station and bring it home.
Simple.
I love this model of the White House.
Yes.
How incredible. So the Reagans have a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel named Rex, and the chief usher, then the curator of the White House, Rex Skelton.
Correct.
So,
Named
I
after
think
him.
is that flattery or not? I would hope it's a flattering naming
I think
him
that
in
was the
honor of
intention.
Rex. A beautiful dog and clearly beloved by the Reagans. But I love this. This is the White House for Rex.
Rex gets his own doghouse, White House. It's complete with presidential seal, the U.S. flag atop it.
Oh,
and
this is fantastic. I love this.
an entrance. The Navy Seabees created this and titled it Rex's White House.
Oh, he has his own entrance.
He has
in
his
there.
own entrance.
Yeah.
He can come in and out.
That's fantastic.
I think it's just fabulous.
Well, and then we go, of course, into the Bush presidency.
The Bush presidency.
Millie, I know Mrs. Bush wrote about Millie, had a famous Millie's book. I see
Millie's
there.
book. Absolutely. Millie was taken with Barbara Bush to nursing homes, senior citizen centers, in some ways playing the role of therapy dog, wildly popular. You can obviously see the Bushes with their dogs, with Joe DiMaggio, with Boris Yeltsin.
That's great. And it looks, Millie even had her own Barbara Bush pearls. looks like.
Exactly.
How classic.
She even did her exercise with the dogs. You can see a photo of them all in matching sweatsuits.
Oh, look at that. Oh, that's fantastic. And so the pets did travel. They would go from
Oh,
presidential
certainly.
home back to the White House to Camp David. And we come up on, here's George W. Bush, another Scotty.
Another Scotty.
Barney.
Right. Yes, they had Barney and Miss
Miss
Beasley.
Beasley, that's right.
Yes, who was everywhere and in the White House. And I think most famously, the Barney Cam.
Yeah, I think the first foray into presidential pet social media
Yes.
became I remember even during the Christmas decorations with the Barney rolling the Christmas ornament down the cross hall in the White House, I believe it was, or the East Room. And look at him there in the snow. That's fantastic.
Correct. Well, this video was so popular, it crashed the White House server. The viewership was so high.
That's wonderful of Mrs. Bush there. That's at Christmas welcoming him
It's
in.
at Christmas. Absolutely.
So we get to the Obamas, and they don't have pets when they first enter the White House.
That's right.
And there's this wonderful Kennedy connection. I think Senator Ted Kennedy had these Portuguese water dogs that he loved, and he thought that the Obamas needed to have one. And so I think Bo started, and then
That's
we
right.
ended up with Sonny, and they became really iconic. In fact, I have a great picture we'll insert here of me with Bo and Sonny sitting in chairs, and there's just overwhelming me really with they were just they knew they were presidential pets, but they were also very friendly. Look at this. Tell me about this. This is incredible.
Well, as a White House decoration, somebody made a slightly larger than life size recreation of Bo using just pipe cleaners.
Wow.
It's extraordinary.
Look at that.
And I believe that President Obama wasn't initially so excited about having a dog, but he did promise the girls that if he won the presidency, they could have a dog. But he quickly grew to love the dogs.
You know, there's a wonderful story. The people that work behind the scenes at the White House that are the backbone,
Sure.
the resident staff, there are about 100 of them. One of them is a phenomenal gentleman by the name of Dale Haney. Dale was on the South Lawn in 1974 when the Fords walked the Nixons to the helicopter, and he's still at the White House. And one of the roles that he takes on with the grounds responsibilities and connectivity with the Park Service is taking care of the presidential pets. And so I would see him out walking Bo and Sonny and taking care of them, and they loved him just as much as if he were a part of the family. So Dale is a wonderful human being and a tremendous public servant.
Oh, that's a good bit of history.
Look at here. It's Bo meeting himself. That's really
Yes.
great. Wow. And so now we're going into the Clinton presidency.
The Clinton presidency, and arguably the most famous first cat of the White House, Socks.
And the first cat we've talked about. We've talked about dogs up until this point.
There are earlier cats, including Tom Kitten in the Kennedy administration, but Tom Kitten doesn't get nearly the press attention as Macaroni or the dogs, or certainly not like Socks the cat.
Well, Socks had free reign. I think an
Yes.
all-access badge Socks was everywhere, and truly a wonderful family pet.
Yes.
And of course, President Clinton also had a dog. You see his lab over there, and you
Yes,
see him
Buddy.
squaring. Buddy is squaring off with Fox there, like.
Buddy comes a little later in the presidency, but Socks has already stolen the spotlight and keeps it.
Isn't that really fantastic?
Yes, I love the T-shirt, saying the second inauguration of Socks the cat.
I love that. Great seal of the United Cats. And such a personality, that expression is just such a unique, of course, cats have that personality. You never know really quite what they're thinking.
Right. And of course, there are so many fan letters to the cat, and the cat responds with the paw print, right? That tradition continues. Just marvelous.
And look at the press, the media
The
captivated.
media all over
by
this
Socks.
cat.
Yeah, I love it.
Yes, I particularly like the image of Socks Clinton at the White House press podium.
That's great. Alan, the Reagans had the White House for Rex, and this appears to be a cat White House.
Yes, this is the kitty condo for Socks the cat. It's wonderful. It's built like a big scratching post
Yes.
in the shape of the White House, but it's got curtains inside. There are multiple levels. The cat can exit through the roof. It is really comfortable for the cat.
Wow. I love this with the cats. We see Susan Ford
Yes.
and her cat,
Siamese
Shan.
cat Shan.
Of course, Amy was a young girl in the White House.
Yes.
Misty Malarkey Yin Yang.
Misty Malarkey Yin Yang. And Amy was kind enough. We let her know that she was in our exhibit
Yes.
with Misty Malarkey Yin Yang. And she came and visited us and posed a picture of her current self with the prior self. And she said that the cat was a good comfort to her because the White House is a stressful environment for a young person to grow up in.
Right. I love that. And Willow, the Biden's cat, I actually met Willow.
Oh, wonderful.
With Dr. Biden in her office. And Dr. Biden did a book on Willow, like Mrs. Bush did the book on
Yes.
Millie. And you can see on the presidential Christmas card, Willow's little paw print there included with President and Dr. Biden.
I think with this and other parts of the exhibit as well, we have so much that is written as if it was the pet speaking. And I think that children are going to love trying to imagine what the White House would have been like during each of those eras.
I wonder how many families come into this exhibit without a pet, but mom and dad get their arm twisted afterwards.
I'm hoping that'll happen a few times.
This is another.
The responsibilities of pet ownership.
Mhm.
Some pets are a little bit more challenging than others. And we start to talk about Major with President Biden as a wonderful pet, but had some challenges.
Right. Well, there's all kinds of stimulation in the White House and a lot of
Yes.
strangers in the White House.
It
And
can be very chaotic for a
it's,
dog.
it has to be really a special animal that's able to adjust to that.
Some pets are judged to not fit well with the White House living, and they either stay back at the family
Sure.
home,
Sure.
or sometimes they are given to others and adopted
Sure.
away.
Well, now we see
Oh,
a beautiful gallery here.
this is the staff favorite. These are the photos that belong to the staff here at the JFK Presidential Library and Museum, including my dog is in the slideshow.
Oh, how great.
And Amy Carter also submitted a photo of her current pet,
Wow.
her current cat. And so you can go through, and I think it was a wonderful opportunity for our staff to feel like they were
Yeah.
personally part of the exhibit. And I think it makes this place relatable, just as the White House is more relatable with pets in it.
Okay, when we show this, I'm going to have to insert my picture of my boxer, Admiral.
Perfect
Bless his
name,
heart. Yeah.
perfect
Great
choice.
dog.
My dog is a Boxer Lab mix, and boxers have such
Yeah, well,
personality.
he carried himself like an admiral too. He was really great. Tell us about this. Your people get to share their own stories.
What many children have chosen to do here is draw pictures of their pets. Cats, dogs, and others
Yeah.
with their names, and sometimes describing their personalities as everything from wonderful and loving to cranky.
Wow. And look at Mrs. Kennedy. I think this picture is so poignant. Up in the upper level of the White House, the solarium, Mrs. Kennedy created essentially a little school for Caroline.
That's correct.
And here she is up there with them. And it's just a lovely family moment of here she is at such a young age. She became First Lady at age 31
Yes.
and young children and is being a mom. She's First Lady of the United States, but job number one is being a mom.
Yes.
That's a wonderful depiction of that.
I'm glad you appreciate it. I believe Eleanor Roosevelt gave her good counsel about how challenging it can be to raise children under the microscope of public observation during the White House years. She did her best to protect them from that.
And I remember a wonderful story that I heard Mrs. Obama give. She had not been to the White House, and she's on that traditional visit to meet Laura Bush, who had welcomed them to the White House to show them the home in which they would be living. And they go up the elevator to the residence, and Mrs. Obama's thinking, how am I going to raise these two young girls in a museum? And she says, those doors parted, and we went into the residence level, and it felt like a home. And I knew then that we would have a wonderful experience there as a family. And then they added Bo and Sonny, and the family grew.
Yes. Well, in a little bit, we'll talk about my opinion of the strangest thing to ride in that elevator. We'll come back to that.
Okay, you have intrigued me now. Of course, we had Liberty had pups.
Yes.
Millie had pups. And so you had family growth and evolution
Yes.
in the White House as well.
The Kennedys had pups because Charlie and Pushinka had pups. And they had an essay contest, and there were 5,000 essays, and they picked a couple of families in the Midwest to receive a couple of those pups, and then they also gave 2 to family members. But boy, those are popular.
And here's President Biden with Commander, another presidential pet that I actually met and have a photo with.
Yes.
A great pup. Look at all of these. What is this here? Trivia time.
So this is an opportunity for people to guess who was the presidential ram who enjoyed chewing tobacco.
And the answer is
Old Ike under Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, I love this.
So you can,
And it's child level too.
It's child
perfect
level.
for them.
and if they don't know the answer, they could just reveal it, or they could run around and try to find the answer and then come back and see if they figured it out.
That's great.
During the Bush presidency, for Christmas ornaments, they had a bunch of paper mache ornaments made of prior presidential pets.
Yes, that's right.
And so the Bush Library has all those, and they were willing to lend them to us for this exhibit.
Another example of collaboration among these presidential libraries.
Absolutely.
Sites. Look at this. You know, that Reagan had that great smile, and of course,
Yes.
this literally larger than life,
Yes.
a dog in his lap on Marine One is really terrific.
Lucky was an amazing dog and a bit large and challenging for Nancy Reagan to hold on a leash.
Yeah, Rex was about more her speed, I think.
Yes.
This is fantastic. Now we get into the working animals that actually serviced the White House. I guess you could call them pets in some category.
Yes.
But they actually lived and worked. And here we have an array of sheep on the south lawn of the White
Sheep
House.
grazing the lawn. And that is labor. And
They're a pretty economical way to cut the grass, I would say.
yes. And later the sheep get sheared and the wool sold to raise money for the Red Cross during the war.
Other working animals here. Oh, there's my friend Pauline.
Pauline, yes.
She was quite famous.
Generated a lot of milk. Pauline was popular. You have the working animals that start out. And working animals continue late because President George Herbert Walker Bush needs a service dog towards the end of his life. Sully. At his funeral, Sully
One of the most
sits by.
poignant and powerful images from the funeral of President George H.W. Bush is Sully laying beside his casket, dutiful to the very, very end. Really powerful.
It is powerful.
Now, George Washington, our only president not to live in the White House, but
That's
he created the site or selected the site, hired the architect and the builder and built it, but didn't live there. So tell us, he of course had an array of dogs and working animals at Mount Vernon.
Yes, and most famously his horse Nelson.
Yes.
So they don't live in the White House, though I'm sure they've been on the grounds perhaps at certain points. But Sweet Lips, one of the dogs of George Washington, the first pet to actually move into the White House is actually Thomas Jefferson's bird, his mockingbird.
Wow.
named Dick.
Wouldn't you just love to hear George Washington calling out, "Sweet lips, sweet lips"? Now, horses, obviously significant. Here's Washington's horse Nelson, you see here, but these were working animals
Yes.
at the White House, but also all the way up through Macaroni, but had a pet dimension to them as well.
That's right. Yes.
Possums and presidents. That's a
Yes.
headline for you.
Billy Possum. And also we have Benjamin Harrison, whose campaign slogan was protection and reciprocity, named his two possums Protection and
What
Reciprocity.
great possum names. I think that's really terrific.
We have so many pets that were gifted to the White House, though they may not have been kept as pets. They may have been turned
okay,
over.
now, so this really gives you the array of things we would never consider as a pet,
As a pet.
in our world. A baboon,
Yes.
a badger, a bear, raccoon, an antelope. I don't think you could keep an antelope in your living room today.
Right.
But just the array of gifts, people giving, leaders of other countries giving of their culture, these
Yes.
wonderful animals. And of course, many were sent to the National
They
Zoo,
went to the National Zoo.
which is really terrific. I think probably the most iconic of them was with President Nixon and the pandas. And the descendants of that initial loan gift of the pandas by China, the Nixon presidency, we still have at the National Zoo, a wonderful site that is part of the Smithsonian. It's really a free and available asset for people visiting Washington that really is another dimension of our American
I'll
history.
just
that
point out one that stands out. We'll come to it in a little bit, but you wouldn't think of any of these as actual pets.
Yes.
Wonderful gifts. They go to the zoo.
Yes.
But for a time, Teddy Roosevelt and his family take care of a pet badger, Josiah the Badger. We'll
There
come
he
to
is.
that image in a little bit.
Well, he's a sharp-looking fellow, but I wouldn't want to cross him.
No. And so you see the evolution from workers to companions to family members over time. We have Old Bob, the favorite horse of Abraham Lincoln.
And the stables, of course, you can see here.
Yes.
The south portico of the White House, and right there are the stables. Of course, they had to be close by. They would have horse-drawn carriages that
Yes.
Lincoln would use to go up to Lincoln's cottage, and they would ride around. They were the transportation of the day. Fido,
Fido.
a great pup name.
To my understanding, the first photo of a presidential dog, Fido, obviously derived from the Latin fidelis or faithful, and it became a very popular dog name.
I love that. So, not everybody gets to have a one-legged rooster as a pet.
Yes.
That's something unique. Tell us about
A
this.
one-legged rooster, the joke is we should have named her Hoppy, was part of the menagerie of very, very wide variety of pets in the Teddy Roosevelt White House.
Well, now the Roosevelts had a menagerie of children
Yes.
and a menagerie of pets. And they
Yes.
all lived, and at that time, the president's office was on that same level at the White House.
Yes.
We call the residence level today. And Mrs. Roosevelt said, enough of this. And so President Roosevelt raised the greenhouses, the conservatories that were just to the west of the building, and built what we now refer to as the West Wing. And he moved the president's offices from that floor. I think the pets probably stayed with the kids there, and then he decamped over to what we now call the West Wing.
Yes.
I love this saddle here. This was actually
Right.
Roosevelt's.
This is Roosevelt's saddle and riding crop. You know, a photo of him riding became a very popular postcard that he would send out. And this is the family that had, among other things, Josiah the Badger. But I mentioned the strangest occupant of the elevator.
Oh, yes. Tell us.
When one of the Roosevelt boys has the measles, the other two boys put Algonquin the pony in the elevator to go up and cheer him up.
And that elevator is about this big. So you can just see Algonquin crammed in.
Crammed in there.
That's really fantastic.
For folks who want to know what some of these animal feet or skin or fur feel like.
Oh,
we've got a
yes. Very tactile.
station
Look
here.
at this. The horsehair. Ah, the raccoon. Raccoon feet.
Well, speaking of raccoons,
Ah, here we go. Rebecca.
Rebecca the raccoon. The Coolidges received the raccoon as a Thanksgiving gift to be served.
eat.
Yes, to eat. And Grace Coolidge says, nope, this is Rebecca, and kept it as a pet.
You know, it's amazing how adaptable Rebecca was to a domesticated life. And
Yes.
we think of them now as wild animals and we're scared of them, but Rebecca just fit right in.
I love this news headline. White House raccoon is AWOL 2 hours. Headline in the Indianapolis Star, 1927.
That is great. Rob Roy is the Coolidge
Yes,
pet and one of the grandest of all the First Lady portraits.
agreed.
Grace Coolidge. It's in the China Room on the ground floor of the White House today. And that portrait of her with Rob Roy is just really spectacular.
It's striking.
And then Rob Roy with the president's portrait over here, both two handsome fellows, very in portrait mode. Both portraits are really terrific. Of course, this is the official White House portrait of Mrs. Coolidge, which is extraordinary.
It really brings life to the portrait.
It does. Yeah, it really does bring a personality to it. Pushinka.
Pushinka. Yes, the Kennedys have many pets, a canary, dogs, cats, etc. You know, we have Pushinka, who is a gift from Khrushchev, Nikita Khrushchev. And though we don't have documentation to this effect, there's a lot of rumors and public talk about, is the dog bugged? Is the dog radioactive?
Yeah.
And it's just the Cold War
Yeah.
rumors of the day. But this fluffy dog, and Pushinka does literally mean fluffy, is so popular with the Kennedys and with the American public.
And just think of that little soft diplomacy in a very harsh Cold War time, that
Yes.
there could be that human to human gifting that had a little bit of warmth to it.
Well, I'm a strong believer during the Cold War, so much risk of escalation. The country and the world is very anxious about what could happen. You have an incredible, photogenic, young family with pets. It humanizes the White House for America.
Yes.
I think it humanizes America for the world in a way that helps us diplomatically.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. And now we are at the Kennedys. So, Alan, this is not macaroni. Tell us about this pony.
This is another pony named Leprechaun, a gift from Ireland. It wasn't as well known as macaroni, but certainly beloved.
And of course, President Kennedy, pure Irish descent on both sides of the family.
Yes.
I had the privilege 2 years ago to go over and trace his footsteps on that wonderful trip that he took to Ireland, and the people there are still so proud of that lineage. Of course, so many of our presidents do have Irish descent, but I love that name Leprechaun. That is so perfect for an Irish descendant president.
It is wonderful.
And-
we love telling the story of the Kennedys and the Fitzgeralds and their journey to America, and how in a few short generations, one of their own becomes president of the United States. It's marvelous.
Can't have a better pony name than macaroni.
It is hard to beat. It is hard to
Look,
beat.
trying to go into the Oval Office. I just love this. Imagine being president of the United States with that responsibility and having these two young, wonderful kids and all of these pets. Look at this.
Yes. Well, the office of the presidency is so demanding. And yet, for many, and Caroline has said this, if you're a member of Congress or the Senate and you're going back and forth between your district and DC all the time,
Yes.
you're not around. When you're in the White House,
Yes.
your kids actually get to see you.
That's right.
And Caroline treasured her breakfasts with the president
Wow.
before he began his
Wow.
official duties.
Barbara Bush, I heard her share the story that she would sit in that beautiful Palladium window up in the residence and look down at the Oval Office. And she said, we lived above the shop. And I would look and see George walking home, and I knew it was almost time for dinner when I could look out and see him walking over to the residence.
Yes.
So this saddle has to be a story with that.
Yes, the saddle and riding gear are a gift from King Hassan II of Morocco. It is truly spectacular and elegant, and Caroline loved riding on it. Right next to it, we have a picture of her actually riding in that gear at Camp David.
Oh, look at that. Wow. And you're so fortunate to have her still involved with the library and the museum. Of course, she represented our nation in extraordinary fashion as our ambassador to Japan and our ambassador to Australia. Had the privilege of being with her in Australia about a year and a half ago, and just a wonderful public servant. I think her parents would be very proud of her service that she continued to give the country.
Undoubtedly.
So having gotten a sneak peek this morning, this is one of the simple but really most compelling elements of the entire exhibit.
Well, as part of the National Archives, of course, we are proud stewards of history, both in terms of documents and artifacts. But this is unusual and special in a certain way. Sadly, when Kennedy is assassinated, everything gets swept up, including out of the Resolute desk are boxes of dog treats. And they're just stored for all these years. And suddenly we have an exhibit on presidential pets, and there's a purpose to them.
So this box was literally in President Kennedy's desk, found after he passed.
Yes.
And it was from this box that he would have gotten treats.
He pulled treats out to reward them when they came to the Oval Office.
Oh, I love that. Again, early use of film and depicting the president and Caroline. And
yes, there's a good bit of film and photo documentation of the Kennedys. For the first time in a long time, we have young children in the White House. And again, it just is so relatable for America and the world.
Wow, love that.
And so many people want ponies now as a result of macaroni.
Well, we mentioned Mrs. Kennedy, and she loved horses in her own right. And this is her riding jacket, I believe.
This is her riding jacket. This is Sardar, the horse, and it's a gift from the president of Pakistan. Boarded in Virginia, and she loved riding.
This really wraps up this from all through the presidential eras of our nation's history, and peek behind the curtain of family life is depicted through their pets. And this is extraordinary. I hope everyone watching this can have an opportunity to visit here. And congratulations on really an extraordinary interpretation of life in the White House and a special part of its history.
Well, thank you for recognizing it. Certainly from our perspective, it is the most fun exhibit we've ever put together. People love it. And if you're coming just for the fun, terrific. If you're coming to learn about history, also terrific.
Wow. Congratulations. It's really been special to be with you this morning. And couldn't recommend this highly enough. It's really fantastic.
Well, everybody should bring their family and friends. We'll see you soon.
Right. So this exhibit runs through April of next year. What's next after that?
We're always planning ahead. We've got a multi-year exhibit schedule, but next year for 2026, we will have our America 250 exhibit focusing on civil rights and also a look at the documents that are part of the nation's founding.
Wonderful that these National Archives sites are not just a repository, but the sharer of these items. And you can come to places like our presidential libraries and communities from literally coast to coast and see them, see actual documents, clothing, artifacts, elements that our presidents wore, used, touched. And to me, that really brings these presidents and their first ladies and their families to life. And you do it brilliantly here at the Kennedy Library and Museum.
Thank you. It's always our honor to be stewards of history and make it accessible.
And you do it well. I look forward to being back to see that next exhibit.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you all for listening and watching today. Be sure to subscribe to the White House 1600 Sessions on your favorite podcast provider so that you never miss an episode, and watch the video version on YouTube and Facebook. Your support of the White House Historical Association makes this work possible. When you become an association member, or when you purchase a book, or even the official White House Christmas ornament, you're helping to fund our education mission through teacher programming, publishing, our White House History Live, in-person and virtual events, and our latest initiative, the People's House, a White House experience. You know, we're bringing the White House and its storied history to life at 1700 Pennsylvania Avenue, and it's open to everyone. So plan your visit today and register for free passes at our website, thepeopleshouse.org. And you can learn more about our work as a nonprofit nonpartisan organization by going to our website, whitehousehistory.org. Thank you very much.